Emma Rodriguez pulled her old violin case closer as she walked down the busy street. The autumn wind in Portland was getting cold, and she needed to find a good spot to play before the lunch crowd arrived. She had been playing music on street corners for 3 years now, ever since her grandfather died and left her his special violin. The violin was old and had strange marks carved into its wood. Emma never understood what they meant, but when she played it, people always stopped to listen. Something about the sound was different from other violins. It seemed to reach deep into people's hearts and make them feel things they had forgotten. Emma found her usual spot near the fountain in Pioneer Square. She opened her case and took out the violin. As always, she ran her fingers over the carved marks before lifting it to her shoulder. Today she wanted to play the song that had been stuck in her head all week. It was a melody she had never heard before, but somehow she knew exactly how it should sound. She drew the bow across the strings, and the first notes floated into the air. The melody was sad but beautiful, like sunflowers turning toward the sun on a cloudy day. People walking by began to slow down and listen. A businessman stopped talking on his phone. A mother pushing a stroller sat down on a nearby bench. As Emma played, something strange began to happen. The air in front of her started to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the shimmer grew stronger and other people started pointing at it too. The shimmer became a crack in the air itself. Through the crack, Emma could see another street that looked almost like the one she was standing on, but different. The buildings were the same shape, but painted different colors. The people walking around wore clothes that looked like they were from 50 years ago. Emma stopped playing and the crack disappeared. The people around her looked confused and started talking loudly to each other. Some took out their phones to record videos. Emma quickly put her violin back in its case and tried to leave, but a man in a dark suit stepped in front of her. "Miss Rodriguez," the man said, "my name is Jake Morrison. I work for the government, and I need to talk to you about what just happened." Emma felt scared. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was just playing music." Jake looked around at the crowd of people who were still talking about the strange crack in the air. "We should go somewhere private to talk. What you just did has been happening in other places too. You're not in trouble, but we need your help." "What do you mean it's happening in other places?" Emma asked. Jake pulled out a tablet and showed her a video. It was a young woman playing piano in New York City. As she played, the same kind of crack appeared behind her, showing a different version of the city. Another video showed a man playing guitar in Los Angeles, with the same result. "This started happening 2 weeks ago," Jake explained, "always with musicians, and always when they play certain types of songs. The cracks lead to other versions of our world. We call them parallel dimensions." Emma stared at the videos. "But that's impossible." "A lot of impossible things have been happening lately," Jake said. "The question is, why does your music make these cracks appear? And why are some musicians able to do this while others can't?" Emma thought about her grandfather's violin and the strange marks carved into it. She remembered the stories he used to tell her about music being a bridge between worlds. She had always thought they were just fairy tales. "There's something you need to see," Jake continued. "We built a special place where we're studying these cracks. We've even made contact with people on the other side. But there's a problem. Something is coming through some of the cracks. Something that wants to destroy all the different worlds." Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold wind. "What kind of something?" "We don't know yet, but we think musicians like you might be the key to stopping it. Your grandfather's violin isn't the only special instrument out there. We've found others, and they all seem to be connected somehow." Emma looked down at her violin case. Her whole life had just changed in a few minutes. She thought about her grandfather and the stories he told. Maybe they weren't fairy tales after all. "If I come with you," Emma said slowly, "will you help me understand what's happening?" Jake nodded. "We'll tell you everything we know. But I have to warn you, once you learn the truth, there's no going back to your normal life." Emma took a deep breath and looked around the square one last time. Her normal life of playing music on street corners suddenly seemed very small compared to the possibility of other worlds and the danger that threatened them all. Okay, she said. Let's go. Jake drove Emma through the city in a black car with tinted windows. They rode in silence for 20 minutes before turning into what looked like an old warehouse district. But when they stopped at a building that seemed empty from the outside, Jake used a special car to open doors that Emma couldn't even see from the street. Inside, the building was nothing like it appeared. Bright lights filled large rooms full of computers and strange machines. People in white coats walked around carrying tablets and talking in quiet voices. Emma had never seen anything like it. "Welcome, Project Harmony," Jake said as they walked down a long hallway. "This is where we study the dimensional cracks and try to understand what's happening." They stopped at a door marked with numbers Emma didn't recognize. Jake knocked, and a woman's voice called for them to come in. The woman behind the desk was about 40 years old with short black hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. "Emma Rodriguez, meet Dr. Lisa Chun," Jake said. "She's the head scientist for this project." Dr. Chun stood up and shook Emma's hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. What you did today in the square was remarkable. Your violin created one of the clearest dimensional windows we've ever recorded." "Dimensional windows?" Emma asked, still trying to understand everything. Dr. Chin walked over to a large screen on the wall and pressed some buttons. The screen showed a map of the world with dozens of red dots scattered across it. Each of these dots represents a place where someone with musical ability has opened a crack to another dimension. It started 2 weeks ago in Japan with a young man playing a flute. Since then, it's been happening more and more often. But why musicians? Emma asked. "We think it has to do with sound waves and frequency." Dr. Chin explained. "Music creates vibrations that can affect the barriers between different versions of reality. But not just any music or any musician. It has to be someone playing with real emotion and talent, and usually with a special instrument." Jake pointed to another part of the screen. "Show her the contact footage." Dr. Chin pressed more buttons, and the screen changed to show a video. Emma watched as a woman who looked exactly like Dr. Chin appeared in what seemed to be the same room, but with small differences. The other Dr. Chin was wearing different clothes and had longer hair. "This is Dr. Chun from Dimension B7, the real Dr. Chin explained. "We've been able to talk with scientists and government officials from 12 different versions of Earth so far. They're all dealing with the same problem." Emma stared at the screen. "There are other versions of all of us?" "Yes, but they're not exactly the same," Dr. Chin said. "In some dimensions, history went differently. In one, the American Civil War never ended. In another, humans never invented cars and still use horses. But in all of them, the dimensional cracks started appearing at the same time." The other Dr. Chin on the screen began to speak. "We've formed what we call the Multiverse Council. Representatives from all the dimensions we can contact are working together to solve this crisis." "What crisis?" Emma asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Dr. Chin turned off the screen and looked serious. "Something is coming through some of the cracks. We call it the Void Collective. It appears to be a group of beings from a dimension where all creativity and art died long ago. They want to spread that emptiness to all other dimensions." Emma felt cold fear in her stomach. "What do?" "They consume the vibrations that hold reality together," Jake explained. "Wherever they go, color fades, music becomes impossible to play, and eventually the dimension itself starts to collapse. We've already lost contact with 3 parallel Earths." Dr. Chin sat back down at her desk. "The strange thing is, they seem to be afraid of certain types of music. That's why we think musicians like you are so important. Your grandfather's violin and other special instruments might be weapons we can use against them." Emma opened her violin case and looked at the carved marks on her grandfather's instrument. "He used to tell me stories about music being a bridge between worlds. I thought they were just made up." "Many old stories contain more truth than we realize," Dr. Chin said gently. "We think your grandfather and others like him knew about the other dimensions. They may have been preparing for something like this." "What do you want me to do?" Emma asked. Jake and Dr. Chin looked at each other before Dr. Chin answered. "We want you to meet your other selves. Emma Rodriguez exists in most of the dimensions we've contacted, and she's always a musician. But in each dimension, You play different instruments in different types of music. We think that if we can get all the different versions of you to work together, along with other special musicians, we might be able to create a defense against a void collective, Jake added. Emma thought about her quiet life playing music on street corners. Now these people were asking her to help save not just her own world, but many different versions of it. It seemed impossible, but she remembered a crack in the air that appeared when she played her violin. Impossible things were becoming normal. When do we start? Emma asked. Dr. Chen smiled for the first time since Emma had met her. Right now, we have a dimensional communication device set up in the next room. Are you ready to meet another version of yourself? Emma nodded, picked up her violin case, and followed them toward what might be the most important conversation of her life. Dr. Chen led Emma into a room filled with strange machines that hummed and buzzed with electricity. In the center was a large metal circle standing upright, like a doorway. Wires and cables ran from it to computers all around the room. Scientists in white coats were checking numbers on screens and adjusting controls. This is our dimensional communicator, Dr. Chen explained. It uses the same frequencies that your music creates, but we can control it with machines. We can open stable windows to other dimensions and talk to people there. Emma walked closer to the metal circle. The air inside it was shimmering just like it had when she played her violin in the square. But this shimmer was steady and controlled. We're going to connect you with Emma from Dimension C, 3 first. Jake said. She's been waiting to meet you. One of the scientists pressed some buttons, and the shimmer in the circle became clearer. Emma could see through it like looking through a window. On the other side was a room that looked similar to one she was standing in, but the walls were painted blue instead of white. A young woman walked into view on the other side. Emma gasped when she saw her. It was like looking in a mirror, but not exactly. This other Emma had the same face and hair, but she was wearing a leather jacket and had small earrings that looked like musical notes. Hi there, the other Emma said with a smile. This is pretty wild, isn't it? Emma didn't know what to say. She was talking to another version of herself from a different world. You're really me? I'm really me and you're really you, the other Emma laughed. But we're both Emma Rodriguez. In my world, I play electric guitar in a rock band called Parallel Lines. What do you play? Violin, Emma said, holding up her case. Classical music and folk songs, mostly on street corners. Street corners? Cool. I play in clubs and concert halls. Dr. Chen here told me about your grandfather's special violin. In my world, I inherited his electric guitar. It has the same kind of carved marks on it. Emma opened her case and showed her violin to the other Emma. The rock musician pulled out a guitar and held it up. Even though the instruments were completely different, Emma could see that the carved marks were almost identical. Dr. Chun thinks these instruments are connected somehow, the other Emma said, like they were made by the same person or group of people, even though they exist in different dimensions. Dr. Chen stepped forward. We've found similar instruments in 8 of the 12 dimensions we can contact, always owned by a version of Emma Rodriguez, and always with the same carved symbols. We think your grandfather or versions of him knew this day would come. Jake handed Emma a strange headset with wires attached to it. This will let you hear what the other Emma is playing and let her hear you. We want to see what happens when you play music together across dimensions. Emma put on a headset and lifted her violin. The other Emma plugged her guitar into an amplifier and adjusted some settings. What should we play? She asked. I don't know, Emma said. Maybe that melody I was playing earlier? The one that opened the first crack. I don't know that one, but play it and I'll try to follow along. Emma began to play the haunting melody she had performed in the square. Through her headset, she could hear the other Emma listening carefully. After a few notes, the rock musician began to play the same melody on her electric guitar, but with a harder, more driving rhythm. The 2 different versions of the same song should have clashed, but instead they fit together perfectly. The violin suite, sad notes mixed with the guitar's powerful chords to create something neither could have made alone. As they played together, something amazing happened. The dimensional window between them began to grow larger and more stable. Other scientists in the room started getting excited, pointing at their computer screens and talking rapidly to each other. But then something else appeared in the window. Behind the other Emma, the blue walls of her room began to fade to gray. The lights grew dimmer, and a cold shadow seemed to creep across everything. "Stop playing," Dr. Chin shouted. Everyone stopped. Both Emmas stopped their music immediately. The shadow in the other dimension pulled back, and the colors returned to normal. But Emma had seen the fear in her other self's eyes. "What was that?" Emma asked. The other Emma was breathing hard. "That was them, the Void Collective. They're attracted to our music when we play together. The stronger our harmony gets, the more they notice us." Dr. Chin looked worried as she studied the readings on her computers. "This confirms our worst fears. The Void Collective can track cross-dimensional music, but it also proves our theory might work." "What theory?" Emma asked. Jake pulled up a chair for Emma to sit down. "We think that if we can get enough musicians from enough dimensions to play together at the same time, we can create something powerful enough to push the Void Collective back permanently. We call it the Harmony Weapon. But it's going to be dangerous," the other Emma said through the dimensional window. "Every time we try to coordinate our music, we risk drawing their attention. And if they find us before we're ready..." She didn't finish the sentence, but Emma understood. The Void Collective would destroy their dimensions before they could complete their musical weapon. Dr. Chin checked her watch. "We have representatives from 6 other dimensions standing by. Emma, are you ready to meet more versions of yourself? We need to start building our cross-dimensional orchestra as quickly as possible." Emma looked at her violin, then at the other Emma through the dimensional window, then at all the scientists watching her hopefully. She thought about her quiet life playing music on street corners. That life was gone forever now. In its place was a responsibility bigger than anything she had ever imagined. "How many of me are there?" Emma asked. 12 that we know of so far," Dr. Chin replied. "A violinist, a guitarist, a pianist, a drummer, a flute player, a singer, and others. Each one has inherited a special instrument from their grandfather, and each one might be the key to saving all of our worlds." Emma took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's meet them." 3 days later, Emma stood in front of 12-dimensional windows, each showing a different version of herself. The rock guitarist Emma was there, along with jazz pianist Emma, who wore a fancy blue dress, a country singer Emma in cowboy boots, and 9 others. Each one had inherited a special instrument from their grandfather, and each one looked slightly different but unmistakably the same person. "This is incredible," said the pianist Emma from Dimension F2. "I never imagined there could be so many versions of us." "The question is, can we all play together?" asked the drummer Emma from Dimension H5. She had short, spiky hair and tattoos on her arms. "Our music styles are completely different. Dr. Chin had spent the last 3 days working with scientists from all the dimensions to create what they call the Harmony Protocol. It was a musical composition that would let all 12 Emmas play their own style of music, while staying in sync with each other. Everyone has a sheet music now," Dr. Chin announced to the room. "The song is designed so that each of you can play it on your own instrument in your own style, but all the parts will fit together mathematically." Emma looked at the sheet music on her stand. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Instead of just notes, it had symbols and numbers that showed how her violin part connected to the guitar parts, the piano parts, and all the others. "Remember," Jake said, "this is just a test. If anything goes wrong, stop playing immediately. We've had to evacuate 3 small towns near other test sites because of dimensional instability." Emma felt nervous. She had been practicing her part for hours, but playing alone was very different from playing with 11 other versions of herself across multiple dimensions. "Is everyone ready?" Dr. Chin asked. The 12 Emmas all nodded. Emma lifted her violin and looked at the others through their dimensional windows. The rock guitarist plugged in her guitar. The pianist placed her hands on the keys. The drummer picked up her sticks. "On my count," Dr. Chin said. 3, 2, 1, begin." Emma started playing her part of the Harmony Protocol. It was a beautiful melody that reminded her of her grandfather's favorite songs. Through her headset, she could hear the other Emmas joining in. The guitar added power, the piano added elegance, the drums added rhythm. For the first few minutes, Everything seemed perfect. The different musical styles blended together in a way that made Emma's heart soar. She had never heard anything so beautiful or felt so connected to other people, even though they were versions of herself. But then things started to go wrong. The country singer Emma began playing too fast, trying to turn the song into a barn dance. The heavy metal Emma from Dimension K9 started playing too loud, drowning out the gentler instruments. The classical flute Emma couldn't keep up with the faster pace and began falling behind. "Stay together," Dr. Chin shouted, but it was too late. The 12 different musical styles, instead of harmonizing, began to fight each other. Emma tried to hold her part steady, but she could feel the song falling apart. Through the dimensional windows, she could see the other Emmas looking frustrated and confused. Suddenly, the dimensional windows began to flicker and shake. Alarms started going off all around the facility. Emma saw one of the windows crack like glass, and through it she could see buildings in the other dimensions starting to fade and become transparent. "Stop. Everyone stop playing now," Jake yelled. All 12 Emmas stopped their music, but the damage was already done. 3 of the dimensional windows collapsed completely, cutting off contact with those versions of Earth. The remaining windows were unstable and fuzzy. Dr. Chin was reading reports from her computer with a horrified expression. "We've got reports of dimensional disturbances in Seattle, Denver, and Atlanta. Buildings are phasing in and out of reality. People are seeing through walls." Emma put down her violin, feeling sick. Did we do that? The conflicting music created resonance patterns that weakened the barrier between dimensions. Dr. Chin explained sadly. "Instead of strengthening our reality, we made it more fragile." Jake was talking rapidly into his phone, coordinating emergency response teams. When he hung up, he looked at Emma with tired eyes. 6 people in Seattle were temporarily shifted into a parallel dimension where their apartment building didn't exist. They fell 3 stories before shifting back. 2 are in hospital. Emma felt tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." "It's not your fault," the pianist Emma said through one of the remaining windows. "We all tried our best. But maybe we're thinking about this wrong." "What do you mean?" Emma asked. The rock guitarist Emma spoke up. "We were trying to force our different music styles to fit into one song. But that's not how music really works. Real harmony comes from differences working together, not from everyone trying to sound the same." The jazz pianist Emma nodded. "In jazz, we call it improvisation. You don't plan every note. You listen to what others are playing and respond to it. You create something new together." Dr. Chin looked interested. "Are you suggesting we abandon the structure approach?" "I'm suggesting we learn to listen to each other first," the pianist Emma replied. "Before we try to save the world, maybe we need to understand how to make music together." Emma wiped her eyes and picked up her violin again. "She's right. My grandfather always said that music is a conversation. You can't have a conversation if everyone is just talking and nobody is listening." Jake looked around the damaged room, with its broken dimensional windows and malfunctioning equipment. "The Void Collective is getting stronger. We've lost contact with 2 more dimensions since yesterday. We don't have time for music lessons." "We don't have time not to learn," Emma replied. "If we keep trying to force this and keep failing, we'll destroy our own dimensions before the Void Collective even gets here." Dr. Chin saved her data and started shutting down the damaged equipment. Emma's right. We need a new approach. Instead of trying to control the harmony, we need to learn how to create it naturally. Emma looked through the remaining dimensional windows at the other versions of herself. They all looked discouraged, but not defeated. "Tomorrow, we start over. But this time, we learn to play together before we try to save the world." The rock guitarist Emma smiled through her window. "I like that plan. But next time, let's start with something simpler. Maybe Happy Birthday or Mary Had a Little Lamb." Despite everything that had gone wrong, Emma found herself smiling too. If 12 versions of herself couldn't learn to make music together, how could they possibly save 12 different versions of reality? But they had to try. The alternative was letting the silence of the Void Collective spread across all worlds, and Emma would never let that happen. Emma had been practicing with her alternate selves for 2 weeks when the first attack came. They had made real progress learning to listen to each other and create gentle harmonies with simple songs. But they were nowhere near ready for what happened next. The alarms in the facility started screaming at 3 in the morning. Emma woke up in her small room at the base and ran to the main control center. Dr. Chen was already there, staring at multiple screens showing dimensional readings from around the world. "What's happening?" Emma asked, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Dimension G," for has gone completely silent, Dr. Chen said with a shaky voice. "We lost all contact 6 hours ago, and now the readings show that whatever destroyed it is moving toward Dimension C3. Emma felt her heart drop. Dimension C3 was where the rock guitarist Emma lived. Can we ward her? Jake ran into the room carrying a cup of coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. "We tried. The dimensional window keeps cutting out. Something is blocking our signal." Dr. Chen brought up a fuzzy image on the main screen. Through the static, Emma could barely see the other Emma in her world's version of the facility. But behind her, everything was wrong. The walls were turning black, and the air itself seemed to be disappearing. "Emma," the rock guitarist shouted through the broken connection. "Can you hear me?" "They're here. The Void Collective is in our dimension." The image on the screen flickered and got worse. Emma could see her alternate self running toward her guitar, but the sound was cutting in and out. "I can see them now," the rock guitarist Emma called out. "They look like people, but they're completely gray and empty. When they touch things, the color drains away. Music won't play near them. Even our special instruments are getting quiet." The connection cut out completely. Emma stared at the blank screen, knowing that another version of herself was fighting for her life in a dying world. "How long do we have?" Emma asked quietly. Dr. Chen checked her readings. "Based on how fast they consume the other dimensions, maybe 2 days before they reach us." Emma sat down heavily in a chair. 2 days to perfect a musical weapon they barely understood, using a harmony they were still learning to create. It seemed impossible. But then she remembered something her grandfather had told her long ago. "Music isn't about the notes you play," he had said. "It's about the spaces between the notes. It's about the pattern that connects everything together." Emma stood up suddenly. "Dr. Chen, do you have any information about sunflowers?" "Sunflowers." Dr. Chen looked confused. "Why would we need to know about flowers at a time like this?" "My grandfather used to grow them. He said they were special because of the way their seeds are arranged. It's not random. There's a mathematical pattern that makes them perfect." Jake pulled up some information on his computer. Sunflower seeds follow something called the Fibonacci sequence. Each seed is placed at an angle that creates the most efficient use of space. It's the same pattern found in seashells, galaxies, and lots of natural things. Emma felt excited for the first time in days. What if that's the answer? What if we don't need to force our music to fit together? What if we need to arrange it like nature does? Dr. Chen caught on quickly. "Instead of trying to make all 12 of you play the same song, we arrange your different musical styles in a pattern like sunflower seeds. Each style connects to the others at natural angles. But how do we figure out what those angles are?" Jake asked. Emma picked up her violin and looked at the carved marks her grandfather had left on it. For the first time, she really studied them carefully. They weren't just random decorations. They were a pattern, and the pattern looked like the spiral arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. "He knew," Emma whispered. "Grandfather knew this day would come. The marks on our instruments aren't just decorations. They're a map." Over the next 18 hours, Emma and the remaining alternate selves worked frantically to decode the pattern carved into their instruments. Each Emma's marks were slightly different, showing where that particular musical style fit into the overall design. The jazz pianist Emma was good with mathematics and helped figure out the angles. The classical flute Emma understood complex timing. The folk singer Emma knew how to blend different melodies together smoothly. But as they worked, more dimensions fell to the Void Collective. They lost contact with the heavy metal Emma, then the country singer, then the electronic music composer. By the morning of the second day, only 7 Emmas remained. "They're moving faster now," Dr. Chen reported grimly. Each dimension they consume makes them stronger. We're detecting massive dimensional disturbances heading toward dimension F2. That was where the jazz pianist Emma lived. Emma watched through the dimensional window as her alternate self continued working on the mathematical calculations even as the walls around her began to turn gray. "I've got it," the pianist Emma called out just as the connection started to fail. "The pattern is complete. Each of you needs to play your part at these specific intervals. It's like a spiral, with each instrument adding to the harmony at the golden ratio." The connection went dead. Another Emma was gone. Emma looked at the final pattern they had created together. It was beautiful and complex, like a musical flower opening its petals. But they were running out of time and running out of alternate selves to help perform it. "How many of us are left?" Emma asked. Jake counted the remaining dimensional windows. 5. You, the folk singer, the classical flutist, the opera singer, and the drummer. Is that enough? Dr. Chin looked at the readings on her screen. The Void Collective was moving toward their dimension now. They could see the edge of the gray emptiness beginning to appear in the sky outside the facility. "It has to be enough," Dr. Chin said, "because we're out of time." Emma picked up her violin and looked at her 4 remaining alternate selves through their dimensional windows. They all looked scared but determined. Each of them understood that this was their last chance to save not just their own worlds, but all the worlds that might exist. "Are you ready?" Emma asked. The folk singer Emma nodded. "Let's save the multiverse." Emma lifted her violin to her shoulder and prepared to play the most important song of her life. Outside, the gray emptiness of the Void Collective crept closer, swallowing color and sound as it came. But inside the facility, 5 versions of Emma Rodriguez prepared to prove that human creativity could overcome any darkness, no matter how vast or hungry it might be. The gray emptiness had reached the edges of the city. Emma could see it through the facility's windows, creeping forward like a slow tide that erased everything it touched. Buildings became transparent, then faded to nothing. Cars stopped working and turned to dust. Even the sky was losing its blue color. "Dimensional barriers are failing all around us," Dr. Chin announced, her voice tight with fear. "We have maybe 10 minutes before the Void Collective reaches this building." Emma looked at the 4 remaining dimensional windows. The folk singer Emma was in a world where half the landscape had already turned gray. The classical flute Emma was in a dimension where the sun itself was fading. The opera singer Emma stood in a concert hall where the audience had become empty shadows. The drummer Emma was in a world where all sound was slowly disappearing. "Everyone remember the pattern," Emma said. "Try to keep her voice steady. We start with my violin, then the flute joins at the golden angle, then the folk guitar, then the drums, and finally the opera voice, like petals opening on a sunflower. What if it doesn't work?" asked the drummer Emma through a crackling dimensional window. Emma looked at her grandfather's violin and the spiral pattern carved into its wood. "Then at least we'll go down fighting. Music is what makes us human. If we're going to lose everything, let's lose it while making something beautiful." Jake and Dr. Chin moved to their control stations. All dimensional amplifiers are at maximum power. Dr. Chin called out, "Whatever you're going to do it now." Emma lifted her violin and began to play. The melody was the same one she had played that first day in the square, but now she understood its true meaning. It wasn't just a song. It was a call to every version of herself across all realities, a reminder of what it meant to be human in a universe that could be cold and empty. The music flowed from her violin like water from a spring. Through the dimensional windows, she could see the gray emptiness slow its advance, as if the melody was holding it back. Following the sunflower pattern, the classical flute Emma joined in. Her notes were high and pure, weaving around Emma's melody like silver threads. The combination was more beautiful than either could create alone. The folk singer Emma added her guitar next, playing the same melody but with the warmth and simplicity of campfire songs and lullabies. The 3 instruments together created something that touched the heart as well as the mind. The drummer Emma came in at precisely the right moment, not with loud crashes, but with a gentle rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, steady and strong and alive. The music now had a pulse that made it feel like a living thing. Finally, the opera singer Emma opened her voice and sang without words, using only pure sound to express everything that language could never capture. Joy and sorrow, hope and fear, love and loss, all woven together in notes that soared above the instruments. The 5 parts of the Sunflower Symphony played together in perfect harmony, each one different but all connected by the mathematical pattern Emma's grandfather had hidden in their instruments. The music created visible waves of color that pushed back against the gray emptiness. But something else was happening too. Emma could feel her life energy flowing out of her and into the music. The song was so powerful that it demanded everything she had to give. Through the dimensional windows, she could see the same thing happening to her alternate selves. They were all growing pale and weak as the music grew stronger. "Emma, you have to stop," Dr. Chin shouted. "Your vital signs are dropping." But Emma couldn't stop. The Void Collective was fighting back now, sending waves of silence and emptiness against their music. If she stopped playing, even for a moment, the darkness would win. The folk singer Emma collapsed first, her guitar falling silent as she used the last of her strength to keep her world from disappearing. Her dimensional window flickered and went dark, but the colors in her world stayed bright. The drummer Emma was next, falling to her knees but continuing to play until her hands could no longer move. Her world was saved, but the cost was her life. Emma felt tears running down her face as she played. She was watching herself die over and over again, each sacrifice saving a different version of Earth, but taking away someone she had come to love like a sister. The classical flute Emma stopped breathing just as her final note faded away. The opera singer Emma sang one last perfect note that seemed to hang in the air forever before her voice went silent. Emma was alone now, playing her violin with hands that shook and arms that could barely hold the instrument. The gray emptiness was retreating, pushed back by the echoes of the Sunflower Symphony that continued to ring across all dimensions. But she could feel her own life fading. The music had taken everything from her and her alternate selves. They had saved the multiverse, but none of them would live to see it. "Emma, please stop," Jake begged. "You've done it. The Void Collective is retreating. You can stop now." Emma smiled even as darkness crept around the edges of her vision. "The song isn't finished yet," she whispered. "There's one more movement." She lifted her violin for the final time and began to play a melody she had never heard before but somehow knew by heart. It was a song of sacrifice and love, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things because it was the right thing to do. As she played, Emma could feel her life energy spreading out across all the dimensions, weaving them together in a web of music that would protect them forever. The Void Collective couldn't touch worlds that were connected by human creativity and love. Her grandfather's violin fell from her hands as Emma collapsed to the floor. But the music didn't stop. It echoed through every dimension, a permanent shield of harmony that would keep the multiverse safe. Jake caught Emma as she fell. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved everyone." Emma looked up at him with eyes that were growing dim. "No," she said softly. "We all did it together. That's what music is. That's what being human is." Her eyes closed, and Emma Rodriguez, the street musician who became the savior of infinite worlds, played her final note. 6 months after Emma Rodriguez saved the multiverse, Jake Morrison stood in the same Portland Square where everything had begun. The fountain was still there, and people still walked by with their coffee and phones, but the world was different now in ways most of them would never know. The dimensional rifts had stabilized into something wonderful. Instead of dangerous cracks that threatened reality, they had become controlled gateways that allowed peaceful contact between different versions of Earth. The Interdimensional Harmony Project, as Dr. Chin had named it, now operated from a much larger facility with scientists and artists from 12 different dimensions working together. Jake watched a group of children playing in the square. One little girl had a small violin case and was trying to play a simple melody. She wasn't very good yet, but she kept trying, making the same mistakes over and over with a determined smile. "That song sounds familiar," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Chin approaching with a folder full of reports. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her hair that hadn't been there before the crisis. The stress of coordinating 12 different versions of Earth took its toll. "It should sound familiar," Jake replied. "It's Emma's melody, the one she played that first day." Somehow, children all over the world have been learning it without anyone teaching them. Dr. Chun sat down on a bench and opened her folder. The reports keep coming in. Kids in every dimension are playing or humming variations of the Sunflower Symphony. It's like the music is spreading naturally, passing from person to person. Jake sat down beside her. Emma said music was a bridge between worlds. Maybe she built a bridge that's stronger than she knew. Dr. Chin showed him photographs from other dimensions. Children in 1950s-style clothes playing a melody on harmonicas. Teenagers in a world where everyone dressed like cowboys strumming on guitars. A group of kids in a dimension where technology was more advanced playing on instruments that looked like they came from science fiction movies. The most interesting thing, Dr. Chin continued, is that each dimension's children play it slightly differently. But when we analyze the mathematical patterns, they all fit together. It's like Emma created a song that adapts itself to whatever culture it finds. Jake nodded. He had heard similar reports from every dimension they were in contact with. Emma's sacrifice had done more than just save the multiverse. It had given it a gift that would last forever. A woman pushing a baby's stroller stopped near the fountain. The baby was fussing and crying, but when the little girl with the violin started playing Emma's melody, the baby suddenly became quiet and peaceful. The mother looked surprised and grateful. "Thank you," the mother said to the little girl. "What song is that? It's beautiful." The little girl shrugged. "I don't know the name. I just know how to play it. My grandmother taught it to me, and she said her grandmother taught it to her." Jake and Dr. Chin looked at each other. That was impossible. Emma had only played the song for the first time 6 months ago. But somehow, the music had worked its way backward through time, as well as across dimensions, becoming part of human culture in ways that felt completely natural. The little girl finished her song and put her violin away. As she walked off with her parents, she was humming another melody that Jake didn't recognize, but somehow made him feel hopeful. "The Void Collective," Dr. Chin said quietly. "Our sensors show that the pocket dimension where we trapped them is completely stable. The musical barriers are holding perfectly. And if they ever try to escape..." Dr. Chin smiled. "Every child in the multiverse knows Emma's song now. Every street musician, every school band, every grandmother humming while she cooks dinner. The Void Collective fed on silence and emptiness. Now there's music everywhere all the time, in patterns too complex for them to break." Jake pulled out his phone and showed Dr. Chin a video. It was from the news that morning. A flash mob had formed in Times Square, with hundreds of people spontaneously playing different instruments together. They were all playing variations of Emma's melody, but each person was playing it their own way. Yet somehow, it all fit together in perfect harmony. This is happening in every major city. Jake said, "Not just in our dimension, but in all of them. People are finding each other through music. Artists are collaborating across dimensional barriers. It's like Emma's sacrifice created a permanent connection between all versions of humanity." Dr. Chin closed her folder and leaned back on the bench. "You know what I think happened?" "What?" "I think Emma understood something the rest of us missed. She didn't just save the multiverse. She improved it. Before the crisis, each dimension was isolated and alone. Now they're all connected by something beautiful. Music has become the universal language she always said it was." Jake looked around the square again. A businessman was whistling Emma's melody as he walked to work. A teenager with headphones was nodding along to what sounded like a rock version of the same song. An elderly man feeding pigeons was humming it softly to himself. "Do you think she knew?" Jake asked. "When she made that final sacrifice, do you think she knew it would do all this?" Dr. Chin was quiet for a long moment. "I think Emma Rodriguez was smarter than any of us realized. She was a street musician who saved infinite worlds by understanding that music isn't about perfect performance. It's about connection. It's about bringing people together and making something beautiful that no one could create alone." A group of teenagers walked by, chatting and laughing. One of them had a guitar slung over his shoulder, and as they passed, Jake could hear him playing a soft, gentle version of Emma's melody. His friends were humming along, without even thinking about it. "She's still here," Jake said quietly. "In every note, in every harmony, in every time someone picks up an instrument and plays something beautiful." Emma Rodriguez might have died, but her music is immortal. Dr. Chen stood up and gathered her papers. The multiverse is safe, Jake. Not because we built walls to protect it, but because Emma filled it with so much beauty that there's no room for darkness anymore. As she walked away, Jake remained on the bench for a while longer. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reminded him of sunflowers. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the faint sound of violins and guitars and voices all blending together in a harmony that stretched across dimensions. Emma Rodriguez had played her final note, but her symphony would echo through the multiverse forever.